Stand by for briefing. Welcome to Task Force Raven. All right, operators. So today we're going to do a series of short videos looking at the deployment cycle of Task Force Raven and what that really means. This is an operations or a mission building chapter in the main book. But it's not just meant for GMs alone. It's the GMs are going to do some of the prep work will have to be done. However, the players are brought into it, and they get to facilitate some of the direction that the missions are going. And it really is based on what they know and what they learn, and how they prepare themselves for the deployment that's going to be going in. So for this video, we'll talk about the prep work. On this part, the GM can do this by themselves. You don't want to do this at the table because it's going to take you, not hours or days, but it will take you a little bit of effort. And, you might do it while they're building characters. It doesn't really matter when you do it, but you definitely want them to have it away from the table. So the first thing you need is a concept. What are you looking for in a mission? Are you looking for an agency asset that was investigating a death cult and is now missing? Okay, good concept. You're looking for, there's a strange valley in the Carpathian Mountains and it's ruled by a lord who, there's reports of the paintings of this same lord have been there for 200 to 300 years. Awesome, another good concept. Anything that's occult oriented for Raven is what you want. Once you get that concept down, you're going to need maps. So the good thing about Raven is it takes place in the real world. We give some links in the book. There's an actual tactical map generator if you really want to go down and dirty, and it pulls on real world maps in Google Maps, but allows you to use the actual military iconography for setting up troops and movements of whatever type you need. If you want to get that, like I said, that down in the weeds, outstanding. We also provide a link to a thing called This City Does Not Exist. It gives you made up cities. There's also These People Do Not Exist. And it's another link. It just AI is randomly generating made up people, made up places. And we do advise you use regular world maps and pull those in. Even if you have the name stripped, it doesn't really matter. We're going to be adventuring in the real world. This isn't a make-believe world. If you want to change some names, you can. If you want to add to the maps, even better. But that's really the be-all and all of maps. When you have those maps, look at the topography of the maps, because that's going to help you onto the next sections when you're building out your intelligence that is in general about the area that the players will be operating in. The next thing is what we call the Ouija board. Officially, it's a target deck. We all refer to it as a Ouija board. It'll be 5 index cards. That's my suggestion, or typewritten pages. You can see them here on the left-hand side. Now, that won't look like that when you're using it with the table unless it's something you want to do. I always suggest on the facing of the card, you'll write the top portions here. Those will be on the front of the card. Maybe the middle portion can also be on the front of the card as just real quick reminders. On the back will be the last piece, and we'll get into that. So on these cards, the first, you're going to do 5 cards, one for each important person, location, occurrence, cryptid, anything you can think of that you can put down and say these are your points of investigation, and the players can begin drawing on that inspiration for how they want to handle the mission that's given to them. The next piece are these 3 pieces here, and these are going to be not quite, it's better than common knowledge. It's just like, hey, here's the no kidding of what's out there. So for this instance of El Cardenal, we know that it's widely known that El Cardenal is not a member of the cartel. El Cardenal is definitely a man of faith, but for whatever reason, there's reports that the locals don't do well around El Cardenal. Okay, awesome. So you're gonna do that again. So we have Cabeza de Muerta, which is a cartel, a cocaine smuggling cartel in this instance. The Burned Cabin, a very specific location. Casa de Sanguina, which is just another location, and you can see it's got some attachments to it. It's a known cartel base. It knows they have checkpoints, and they're known to use heavy weaponry. And then there's the Pit. There are disappearances around the area. It's never been charted for its depth, and people tend to avoid it. Okay, so you've got your Ouija board set up, and the next part of this Ouija board is going to be these third pieces, which is considered special intelligence. These are the things that you hold on to, and the players can learn through some of the intelligence sprinkled that you're going to put on the ground for them to discover, or just by running through the operations. In this case, El Cardenal, his biggest problem is he's a ghoul, and he leads a pack of ghouls, and that's kind of further in the investigation. You start learning that it's not quite what it seems. Capes de Muerta, their big secret is that they're funded by the government of the location we're adventuring in. So you're essentially looking at a narco state, and so on and so forth. The last piece that the GM does for prep work is really the biggest piece, and that is going to be pulling in setting up the intelligence. There's examples in the book, and what you need to, this is again where you need to really concentrate on the maps you selected, the area you selected, because your intelligence is going to hit some key points. You're going to look at terrain, what weather might be in the area, might come up in the area, look at the imagery itself, and then you're going to use some points of what would be in the area for imagery. That's how we got the burned cabin in the pit. And Casa de Sanguine to be big enough to show up on overhead. You want to know something about the combatants, non-combatants. Culture comes into this as well as any occult threats that might be there. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. And essentially, you're just building on the fact that you're going to want, like for terrain, what a success does, and what one or more raises will give those operators. And we'll get into that when we actually get into the development pieces of this. The last piece, technically not prep work, but it's going to be something you put down. And this is the first thing you're going to hand to the players, and this will be their warno or their warning note. There is an example in the chapter, and it essentially goes over what's expected of them and why they're getting it. And we like to talk about too is the moment they're handed that warno, it's basically the game clock, right, is ticking 24 hours. Raven deploys as quick as possible. They're a QRF force for anti-occult activities. The Warnor has a classification line. It's more for flavor. It has a sit rep, which tells you what's going on in the smallest fashion and quickest fashion as possible. The op ord, which is exactly how they expect Raven to go in, like it's a halo insertion, hey-ho insertion, DSV out from a submarine off of a coast, things like that, and it's what command expects. It also will more than likely explicitly list out your primary tasking. We'll get into that later. They'll also list, hey, there's the occult activities. This is what's suspected. And then the rules of engagement, which is another card pre-filled out. It doesn't really change for Raven. Raven's ROE stays, but it's a card the players can all have at the table. So when they're making these decisions, you don't just go in and you shoot the shit out of a cantina or fire a tow missile through someone's house, because that's not what Raven does. You still have to maintain yourselves. There's some degree of secrecy because you're still clandestine operators running around these different places. And one more piece is going to be the mission card, and it's a blank card you can give the players, and they can fill it out as they're going along when they're developing their intelligence sources before and after they decide to deploy. And with that, we'll move on to the next video section, which is our find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze, and disseminate. See you there. Raven out.